the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 203 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 59 of A Storm of Swords. That's Sansa 4. Probably the longest hiatus we've had, actually. I think there's 31 chapters since Sansa was last in the spotlight.
Sansa who?
Exactly.
Is she related to Rickon?
Sansa Lannister.
I guess so, yeah. Anyway, as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Hopefully, we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. By the way, there's quite a lot of background in this one.
Oh, well, part of it is me explaining why I chose what I did.
Okay, all right, fine. Be sure to check out the show notes. They provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you? It's been a long time, Mackelly.
It has. I had to remember how everything worked. Now, we are both who we claim to be, as best I can tell.
Yes, we are. Interlopers and imposters have been removed from the scene.
And I think first, before we do anything else, we need to thank Rob. He did a great job standing in as his older brother, much older brother, as he put it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he made me laugh several times. I'd heard the trombone story before, but I didn't. I heard it before I heard it in the podcast. If you see what I mean, I heard it from him before I heard it in the podcast, and so I actually put it in the notes for this one to tell it myself, and then I heard him telling it. I was like, oh, okay.
You beat me to it. Yes, we got a few comments in the Discord server about people laughing out loud at that. A few spit takes, I believe. Of all the things, of all the hobbies for this person to have. Oh well, yes.
I love the idea of Sophie's head just slowly drifting to the pillow, and just as it hits the pillow, you get a wah wah.
Oh, yes. Well, I had a good time with Rob. I mean, Rob and I had never really hung out before. I mean, that was, the first time we'd ever really spent any time together, and I felt like we had a pretty good rapport.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a lot like me. I mean, just like, a lesser version in most ways.
I feel like he might dispute you on that, but I don't know.
He publicly would. Privately, he would admit it.
Oh, I see. He was recording from what appeared to be a closet, and he looked like he had a much better acoustic setup because he had towels all around him. So, it was probably deadening the outside noise and any reverberations and such.
I'm guessing you just mistook his laundry room for...
for a closet. Well, he had a very nice setup for someone coming in on the fly like that. So thank you, Rob.
Yeah, and so we've both had vacations since last we met.
Right, we have. Now, you and I, it's been 3 weeks, I think, since we've had any meaningful conversations.
Yeah, since we've been in town together, basically.
Right, yeah.
I've been up to the mountains twice to avoid the heat, and it's worked very nicely for me.
I'm sure it has. Mm-hmm. It's been very hot around here.
Yes.
And we were supposed to record last weekend, but on my vacation, I managed to come down with a bug that had me incredibly sick for many days. So
you're not 100% yet, I can tell.
I am not. I feel fine. My voice is at like 85%, but I've got this just lingering, what's become now a habitual cough. So, full disclosure, there might be moments where I burst out into coughing. We will try to remove those as best as possible. So,
my most recent trip, the one I've been on this week, was a friend of a friend has a place in the mountains, which is really very, very nice. And they let us rent it for a reasonable price. And you can work from there because it has good Wi-Fi and things. So me and Carson took the dogs, and we went with a couple of friends, and we stayed there for the week, and it was lovely. And they had a hot tub, and we got in the hot tub on the first night, and we splashed around, and it was nice. And then we closed the hot tub, and it had straps to strap it down. And my friend said, should we strap it down? I said, you only need to do that if there's a storm coming. Now, I said that without looking at the weather forecast. That night at about 1:45, was everybody's phone went off for a tornado warning. It
Oh
was
no.
absolute pandemonium out there. I mean, like they have a really nice sort of cabin thing with a really good view over the mountains, and I staggered out of the bedroom and looked out of the windows, and it was just lightning constantly. You couldn't see anything but lightning flashing, just flash, 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 flash. It was
Oh
crazy.
no. And you saw a hot
So,
tub disc float flying through the air like a
well,
frisbee?
well, I weighed up the pros and cons, and I went back to bed. Um, and the next morning, I discovered that my friend got up 10 minutes after me and he braved the weather and went and put the
uh,
straps on. I was like, I did not do that. That was too wild for me. But it
yes.
was nice actually. That cleared the air, and so after that we got beautiful views across the mountains. And
All right.
so it's the mountains of North Carolina, and they're very very pretty.
Yes, very much so. Yeah,
Mm.
we had some weather down here as well. A lot of
Yeah,
trees down.
you texted me to put the fear of God into me.
Well, you've had a history of branches coming down in inopportune
Yeah.
locations, so I
Uh,
wondered about you. But Stacy and I were walking the next morning, and it came by very fast. I was out.
right.
I got the garbage can from the road and was bringing it back in, and in the process of me doing that, it went from just like a normal day to like the end of the world. And by the end, I was running to try and get back to shelter before the world exploded. And it didn't last very long, but the next morning, Stacy and I were walking, and there were trees down everywhere. And unfortunately, there was one big oak tree right across the roof of someone's house.
Ouch.
Yeah,
Mm.
so thankfully it
Yeah,
wasn't me, but
yeah, there's been some wild weather recently, that's for sure.
yeah. But so I mentioned on the Discord server that I had done a thing and that I would tell everyone what I did. So I guess I better live up to that promise. It was
Go for it.
so while we were on vacation, we took a cruise, Royal Caribbean cruise to the Caribbean.
Other cruises are available.
Yes, yes, I get no kickback for
Yeah.
Royal Caribbean, unfortunately.
But
Uh,
but
it,
if you do vacation with Marriott Bonvoy.
That's right. That one we do get a kickback on. um, and so they have different activities and stuff on a cruise ship, and one of the things we did frequently was they had these trivia contests, and we did 3.
By the third one, you were invited to be the quizmaster.
Well, the third quiz or the trivia game, I guess, was Game of Thrones trivia.
Oh,
And,
here we go.
and the kids and Stacy are like, "Oh my goodness, you're gonna kill this. This is gonna be." Molly was like, "This is gonna be like if they had New Girl trivia for me." 'Cause she loves the show New Girl. And I was like, "All right, pump your brakes, everybody. Pump your brakes. Remember, my show is not on Game of Thrones. It is on A Song of Ice and Fire. I intentionally do not watch so that I can keep my book canon 100%."
I'm going to speculate here that they heard you the way Charlie Brown hears the teacher.
Yes. Yeah, so I was like, just relax. And so everybody, I was with 9 other people, 2 other families. Everybody decided to come watch me play this trivia game here, and I was like, oh goodness, no pressure here. I'm coming with my entourage, my royal Kingsguard behind me. And we took an entire corner of the air, the little bar that it was being held in, and I was nervous because they changed some things,
I'm nervous for you.
But when the questions started flying, I went 20 for 20. So
Oh, you
I
did.
did. I did.
That's
Yes.
and did you win? Were there others similar?
Wouldn't you know, I tied.
And
Someone else got 20 out of 20, and so they just split. They just gave us these little Royal Caribbean medallions. So, yeah. So I split with some guy. I knew I had to get them all right because I didn't want to leave any chance that I didn't at least co-win this thing.
right, yeah, for sure, yeah.
But
Did you mention the podcast to the guy?
I wore my shirt. I wore my GOH shirt.
Clever.
But I didn't. The guy. So the guy running the thing only had one little medallion, so he took me up. He gave the other guy the medallion because he got there up to the front first, and by the time I got up there, he's like, "Here, come with me," and he took me off to this other, like place where they keep other medallions and such. So I never actually got to interact with the guy who tied.
Yeah.
But it was cool. And unfortunately, no one came up and asked for my picture and said, "I love your show" or anything.
Well, congratulations. I'm glad it was you. I fear that I would have not won, and I would have been embarrassed. I'd have had to take my shirt off.
Turn it inside out.
Inside out, yeah, exactly.
Well, but you watched the show at least.
18? Yeah, but all that does is confuse me. Yeah.
There were two questions that were different between, the book and the show. One has to do with Bran and hasn't happened yet, so I can't bring it up. Oh my gosh, they both haven't come up yet. So I can't bring up...
Okay. But you got them both right.
I got them both right, yes. Yeah. So,
actually, we've just edited it out because we realized it was a spoiler, but you told me the Bran question. And actually, the Bran question could conceivably come true in the book, too. We don't know how the book's going to end. So it's not necessarily a difference. It's just an extrapolation.
Yes, it's a difference in wording. They use two different terminologies between the book and the show.
Well, you better tell me what the actual answer was then, because I thought you were going to say something different. Well, congratulations, Mackelly. I'm proud of you. I really am. I mean, I was nervous as you were telling that story. I was like, I really hope he wins here.
I finished well in the middle of the pack.
Yeah. Did anyone on your team help you?
No, they were completely useless. All 9 other people, and they were so impressed by how quickly I knew the answers because they had no idea. And how you grade your test, your sheet that they give you, is you trade it with the person next to you. Right. And I went to hand mine to the woman sitting next to me, and she was like, "Oh no, this is embarrassing. You don't want to grade this." I basically just wrote the questions that he was asking because I didn't know any answers. And I was like, why would you come to a Game of Thrones themed trivia if you don't know anything about the show? So I guess maybe she thought, I'll figure it out as I go along from context clues.
She'd heard there was some pro who'd be there and it would be worth watching.
Right, yeah. Yes.
It'd be worth grading his paper.
There was a very sweet lady on the other side of my entourage who I traded with, and she and I had been talking before and after. She was a fan of the Game of Thrones. She didn't know about our show, so I introduced her to our show. So maybe she's listening at this point.
I believe you started something here, Mackelly. I think there's going to be a Ghost of Harrenhal cruise before too long.
Yes, that's what we'll know we've made it by then if we have our own cruise.
Much harder quiz questions.
Yes,
no 20 out of 20 on our quiz questions.
Right, that would not be possible because we'll just delve into our own lives. Although people might actually get those right as well.
That's true. All right, we have shot the breeze.
Breeze
has been shot. So let us get down to business. How did we leave Sansa Stark? Last time Sansa had the POV, it was her marriage to Tyrion. But of course, we've seen her a couple of times since then, not being raped by her husband, continuing to visit the Godswood piously. But again, we're not seeing her POV, so we're just presuming that was to keep rendezvousing with her would-be rescuer, Sir Dontos Hollard, and learning of her brother and mother's death at the once removed hands of her new in-laws. Ouch. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Sansa wakes from a pleasant dream of her family and lady in Winterfell. She rises to the reality she knew awaited her and girds her loins to face the day. Tyrion, as is his wont, has risen before her. She shares a view of clouds that look like a castle with her new servants, Brella and Shae, who have prepared a bath for her. A big day. Joffrey and Margaery are to be wed.
Sansa bathes while thinking about the day. Wedding at noon in Baelor Sept, breakfast before and a feast in the evening. Tyrion and Podrick arrive while she's dressing. She cajoles her husband into a clean doublet for the breakfast. He's drinking already. Tyrion and Pod hevel themselves. By the way, that's a made-up word. So for the non-English speakers, that's not really a word. But dishevel means to become unruly in dress and appearance. So as a joke, hevel is the opposite of dishevel.
Aha. I like it.
It's just just a wordy joke. Uh, Sansa's pleased with the outcome. Podrick is so timid he cannot look at her. She had been wary of him because he's a pain, pain with a Y.
Right.
Um, I mean, I'd be wary of him if he was a pain with an I too, but it's specifically because he's a pain with a Y. But she's now learned that he was far more afraid of her.
In the Queen's ballroom, the breakfast is sumptuous. Then Joffrey, not Marjorie, she's breaking her fast elsewhere, receives gifts. From his mother, the bride cloak that she used, and her mother before that. It's a little ratty in the opinion of the always keen eye for needlework Sansa. A bow and arrow from Jalabar Zo, riding boots from the Stokeworths, a jousting saddle from Uncle Kevin, a gold scorpion brooch from the Martells, and so on and so forth.
Tyrion and Sansa give a book, Kate's History of the Four Kings, one of the remaining originals in Kate's own hand. Uncle Kevin recommends it to all kings. Joffrey pushes it aside, disinterested. He accuses Tyrion of reading too much and failing to impregnate Sansa as a result. He and the court laugh. He offers to do the job for Tyrion, the making a baby, that is, not the reading.
Sure.
Tyrion stays quiet for once.
Mace Tyrell proffers a golden chalice. The 7 faces show the sigils of the 7 great houses. Joffrey thinks the direwolf needs to be replaced by a squid. The last is a gift from Tywin, a magnificent Valyrian steel sword. Joffrey calls for names and settles on Widow's Wail. To demonstrate its sharpness and his bravery, he butchers Tyrion's book. Garland Tyrell observes how rare the book was, but Joffrey ignores and demands a new gift from Tyrion and Sansa.
Tyrion suggests a Valyrian steel dagger as an accompaniment to the sword. Joffrey gives Tyrion a sharp look, but agrees that that would be fitting. The breakfast concludes. The Martells, Oberyn and his paramour Ilaria, fall in beside Tyrion and Sansa. Oberyn mourns the loss of the book. He'd seen one copy in the Citadel. Wondrous illustrations, but too kind to Viserys, in his opinion. Tyrion disagrees. Viserys ruled as Hand while Daeron warred and Baelor prayed. Rumours that he poisoned his own nephew to gain the throne seem entirely forgivable to Tyrion.
Sansa's shocked. She thought Baelor was a great king. He walked the bone way to bring peace to Dorne without being bitten by snakes. Oberyn has thoughts. The Dornish believe Baelor was bitten many times, and the venom drove him mad. But there are no snakes in King's Landing, so what happened to Joffrey? That's Oberyn's question, not mine, although I fully support his line of questioning there. Tyrion and Sansa take their leave and retire to their litter, drawing the curtains against the world.
Tyrion asks if Joffrey quarrelled with Bran while they were in Winterfell. Sansa doubts it. He presses her on what happened to Bran in Winterfell. Assuming he means the fall, Sansa says that they were always afraid of it and that it was inevitable one day. Tyrion mentions that Catelyn once accused him of being involved in something to do with Bran. He doesn't give details, but denies any wrongdoing and assures Sansa that he means her no harm either. She thanks him, but doesn't know what else he's looking for. He offers to tell her the details of Robb and Catelyn's death, but she refuses. He understands that. They both have enough bad dreams already.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Yes. So, yeah, you mentioned right at the top of the show that it's been a while since we've had a Sansa POV.
Oh, yeah.
And I went digging, and our Sansa 3, our episode, came out on January 10th of this year. So it was probably the first episode that we recorded of 2023. And we are now in mid heading toward late August. So
amazing.
I had to kind of refresh myself on what that chapter was about because it's been so long.
I relied on memory, so
of course,
good.
I assumed you did. Yes.
So, they mentioned it's a new year, so happy New Year.
Right. Happy New
Three
Year to you.
it's an anniversary. It's 300 years since Aegon's conquering. So take a moment here. How do we rate the Targaryen dynasty? My first instinct was B minus. That's what I went for,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
I'll justify it if you want, but you can chime in first if you prefer.
Well, uh yeah, I guess that's I mean, yeah, maybe C plus. I mean,
Okay.
there's been some good rulers, Jaehaerys the First, Aegon the Fifth. In the background, we'll hear about an underrated king who had good potential, just didn't have the ability to see it through. And of course, we've had some horrible kings such as Mad
Yeah.
King Aerys and Aegon the Fourth, and of course, we've had a misunderstood king. So
Okay, yeah, he wasn't all good, I admit it. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, obviously, there's been some good ones. I don't think as a dynasty it's been any different than sort of other kings of Westeros or other kings historically in different contexts.
sure.
There's some good, some bad, some repressive. In the Targaryens' case, there do appear to be a slightly above average number of psychotics,
Yes.
which is unfortunate. But sometimes their worst traits and instincts can be curbed. For example, Aerys.
Right.
Aerys was prevented from doing some of the worst things he wanted to do,
Right.
but it
Yes.
did cost Jaime his reputation to do that. But I will say, the more I thought about it, the more I thought there's shameful lack of scientific advancement. Imagine what we here managed to do between 1723 and 2023.
Right.
Imagine the
Yes.
scientific advancements we managed in that period. What have they managed? They have the Citadel. Are they learning anything new?
Yeah,
Feels
but
like
that's a
the whole
right.
thing is just stagnated. Uh, and failure to distribute wealth. I mean, 95% of the people that don't feature in this book live from hand to mouth.
Right.
But
Right.
the feudal lords live high on the hog and churn up young lives in pointless wars all
Yes.
the time. So I'm revising down. C minus.
Yep. You make some solid points there. Definitely lack of advancement in multiple ways. Now we will learn that some kings tried to advance some things, uh, some laws in Westeros, but I think ultimately the lords and kings' primary focus was keeping themselves in power.
Yeah, yeah. I think sort of feudalism generally leads to
Yes.
stagnation,
Right. Right.
and in some ways that's why the Targaryen reign is a bit of a lost opportunity because they brought it together in a way that it hadn't been together for a long time prior to that, and that gave the opportunity. That sort of like centralization of power,
Right.
diminishment of power in the feudal lords, did give an opportunity for the rise of education and the universities, which didn't really happen. And I think that's just it's a blanket complaint rather than an individual king complaint. I think some have been good, bad, or indifferent, but all of those institutional things should have been pushed up generally during this time.
Yeah, maybe they should have more than one facility of learning,
Yeah,
more than just the
yeah,
Citadel in Old Town.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, this chapter it picks up right where Tyrion 7 because we bounced straight from a Tyrion to Sansa, right? So we went
Right.
from
Yeah.
yeah. So Sansa wakes to think, as usual, Tyrion's up before me, but we know that he's not actually been in the bed. He's been with Shae.
Yeah, and when his chapter started, when he was leaving the bedchamber, he noticed that she was dreaming, and he wondered what she was dreaming about.
That's
And
right. She
then
was
this
having a nice
chapter,
dream.
yes, begins with her thinking about what she had just been dreaming about. So there was some symmetry there.
Yeah. And Tyrion has managed to condition Sansa to see those absences as normal, which is helping him keep his affair going. And maybe particularly now it's going to become a little bit easier because Shae is presumably, as Sansa's handmaiden, not too far away.
Right. Yeah, she thinks that Tyrion's not a good sleeper and often up before dawn, which, chances are he might not be a good sleeper.
Yeah.
He's got plenty of stressors. I believe we do know that he's not a very good sleeper, but we also know that there's other things that keep him up at
Uh-huh.
night.
It is a woeful time for Sansa, of course, with Winterfell fallen, married to the enemy, and of the enemy, the one that she sees as a monster, and
Yes.
into her knowledge, every member of her family is dead.
Yes.
We know that Arya, Bran, Rickon remain, and Jon, but Sansa often discounted him. But she thinks
Yeah.
they're all gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And we also get confirmation in this chapter, based on what you're just referencing there, that Tyrion has not told Sansa the news about Arya being with Roose Bolton.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
We don't get any indication as to why, because Sansa doesn't know that Tyrion knows this information.
Well, I'll take a speculation. He doesn't believe it.
That is definitely an option. He doesn't believe it.
Why tell your wife something that's going to prove to be not, give her a false hope? She's already
Right.
miserable. It'd be nice to give her some hope, but if you don't believe it yourself, then
Right. Yeah, I guess you think you'd be setting her up for more hardship down
more
the road.
heartbreak. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And you mentioned Jon, and yeah, Sansa thinks of her whole family being gone and her being the only one left, and she clearly leaves Jon out. And you've always gotten the feeling that Sansa's been very clearly influenced by her mother when
Uh-huh.
it comes to Jon.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, you know what? To a certain extent, even if she was very fond of him, like Arya was, it wouldn't make any difference. He's a member of the Night's Watch now. She's never going to see him again, unless she happens to
Yeah.
go to the Wall one day. But that seems unlikely.
Yeah. I guess there just might be some comfort knowing there's one person out
True,
there
true,
who,
true, true, true.
is your relative who's known you since
Yeah,
birth and all
yeah.
that. Because she even thinks Septim Ordain is gone, and Septim Ordain is someone that had likely known her since birth. So, but there's a line in this very early on, I think it might be the second paragraph, where Sansa thinks to herself that her torment would soon be ended one way or the other. And I read over it a few times trying to see if there was a clear reference to what she's referring to. And I couldn't find a clear reference to what she means by her torment would soon be ended one way or the other. And I
Okay.
wondered, yes, you've got a thought?
I got a thought. I mean, so this is off the cuff. It might steal your thunder. It might be completely different. But we don't know what she's been plotting with Sedontus Holland. We know she's been
Right.
meeting with him, but maybe she believes that the culmination of that plan is at hand.
Yes, I agree. Because we've seen their earlier conversations, and he kept telling her the wedding day. There will be chaos on the wedding day.
Oh,
That's the
right.
day that you will slip away. But last we had heard the plan was called off. So it seems like we had speculated that she was going to the Godswood either in hopes of rekindling the plan or actually rekindling the plan. It
Yeah.
seems like at least she thinks the plan is back on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's how I interpreted that. Yeah. So before her bath, she goes outside and looks at the clouds, and there's a pretty cloud. I like to look at clouds and look for shapes in clouds. And she sees a castle, and she calls out Brella and Shae, her servants, who've been newly appointed, believed to now be loyalists, not working for Cersei. Um,
Right.
and Shae and Brella have an interesting, Sansa wants their opinion on the shape of the cloud, and they all see the castle, but Shae sees it as glinting in gold and a golden castle, but Brella sees it as crumbling. So
Yes.
interesting, sort of optimist pessimist view there. But my
Yeah,
question
like
is,
a Rorschach test or
yeah, exactly, yeah.
you know,
Who,
something.
who, whose portent is it? These things are always portentous. For who is this? Is it, is it for Sansa? Is she going to live in a golden castle? Is she going to live in a crumbling castle? Or is it for Shae? Because Shay's out there looking at this as well, and she, through her rose-tinted Shae glasses, sees this beautiful golden castle. But the realist, Brella, sees it as crumbling, and that feels like it might be talking about Shay's life and how
Yes. Right.
it's smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Sansa, at the end of this chapter, when Oberyn and Ilaria are walking with Sansa and Tyrion, she recalls that Shae had told Sansa that Ilaria was, I think as she put it, almost a whore when Oberyn found her, and now she's near a princess. And you wonder if Shae might be having similar thoughts of hitching her wagon to Tyrion and being, becoming an Ilaria San type character.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and we do get the outward why, like you said, of the reason that Tyrion brought Shae into Sansa's service is because all the previous handwomen were spies, which I certainly think is likely what
Yes.
Tyrion told her. But that's the story we get as to why Shae and Brella were brought in. So, and Rob and I had wondered in the last Tyrion chapter how Shae would handle being around Sansa. And now we get a little snippet here, just like one sentence where Sansa's thinking about how Shae does her job dutifully, but gives the most insolent side glances sometimes. So, we wondered if there might be some jealousy on Shae's part, and possibly that's what we're seeing there.
Yes, this is hard for me to unpack from the television show, because on the television show, Shae very rapidly loses her heart to Sansa.
Oh, okay.
He wants to hate her because she's the rival and
Right.
he's married to her love, but she can't help but feel bad for the girl and actually wants to protect her, and and I
Okay.
think that's not wildly different. I think
Right.
Shae is who she is. She's going to give you the side eye if you ask her to do something she doesn't want to do, no question about it. But Shae's also not totally stupid. She's going
Yes.
to play the part.
Yeah, I think you're right about all that, and I think the show got it right.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing that kind of dawns on Sansa as she's getting ready for this breakfast with the Lannisters is that she's a Lannister now. They made her a Lannister. They made me a Lannister is her thought.
Yeah.
And surely that would be hard to wrap her head around, and also painful to accept, being that it's the house that pretty much caused the demise of her entire family.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing you might hold a grudge over
Yes,
if you were
yes.
so inclined.
And
But, well, go on.
I can't help but think that she might also be thinking about what might have been if she was at the other breakfast with Marjorie and about to be a Tyrell, about to marry Willis Tyrell. She'd still have the hardship of the loss of her family, but at least she'd have the possibility of a new loving family and a spouse that she expects that she can, fully embrace.
Yeah, but I'm always of the opinion that those Tyrells are just what is it? Roses always have thorns or something like that.
Right. They are certainly better at the PR game than the
They are.
Lannisters.
It's not hard.
No,
But
it's really not.
she needs to notice the fact that her husband is actually of a like mind to her. Well,
Right.
actually, I'm not even sure that's true. I think he's actually more decent than Sansa in many ways. Sansa, to be fair, she's still a child, but
Yes, yes.
Sansa, I don't think, would notice the opulence of the feast while the people are starving, but Tyrion does
He
and
does,
comments on
yes.
it and thinks the whole thing is absurd.
Yeah, and yet the public hates him the most, it seems.
Yeah, yeah.
They had to shut the curtains of the litter to avoid dung being thrown at the litter when the small folk realized that Tyrion was inside, which is a shame because he's really the only one doing anything, having done anything to either try and help them or think about them from the Lannister side.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
So the main sort of event at the breakfast is the giving of gifts. So Joffrey gets the wife's cloak, which you put on the shoulders of your wife during the ceremony, and it was the one that Robert gave to Cersei, and before that Tywin gave to Joanna.
Yeah,
So
it must have been really re-embroidered, right? Because the cloak that Tywin would have used to put around Joanna would have been the Lannister sigil on it, I would I would imagine. And then when Robert put it around Cersei, it would have had the Baratheon sigil on it. So they must re-embroider
Yeah.
as need be.
Yeah, but that's interesting actually because then it would come. It would by default here have both Baratheon and Lannister
Oh,
sigils on it, which is very much in keeping with how they're portraying Joffrey.
right. Yes.
Yes,
Portraying at the very loosest end of being a Baratheon, because he's always wearing
exactly,
all red,
exactly. Yeah. Uh, so Joffrey's destruction of the book is totally within our expectations of him. It's an
Yep,
unforgivable
yep.
desecration, given that there are
Oh,
only
yeah.
4 copies of this book and he's destroying one just for the heck of it. Particularly, I think, I mean, the fact that he destroys Tyrion's gift is just the animosity between the two of them. But coming on the fact that his great uncle, I was referring to him as Uncle Kevin, but technically he's his great uncle Kevin,
Right. Yeah.
his proclamation that the book should be read by every king, it's just like, well, okay,
Totally
you're not
discounted.
only offending Tyrion, you're offending Kevin too.
Yes. Yes.
I will give Joffrey props for his one-liner though, because when Garland Tyrell says there were only 4 copies of this book in existence, well, now there's 3, was quite funny.
Yeah, that's it's rare for Joff to have a
To do
witty
anything,
comeback.
yes,
Yes.
anything that isn't awful. But
Yeah.
and props to Garland Tyrell himself for saying it. I do sometimes
Absolutely. Yeah.
wonder if I can't tell if the Tyrells are just not aware of how bad he is, or if they're so secure in their position that they don't care.
Yes, that is definitely something that is it's curious what's going through their mind, because as you said, he acts like a petulant fool in front of all in attendance, to the point where at the end of this chapter, Oberyn Martell thinks Joff deranged, like
Right.
he'd been
Yes.
bitten by a bunch of snakes. So you'd have to think Joff's behavior has setting off alarm bells for everybody, including the Tyrells. And, like you mentioned, Garland speaks up and says something. So clearly he's noticing, oh, he just destroyed, one of the precious artifacts in our entire realm here. And you'd have to think that's concerning as Marjorie's future husband. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, at that breakfast with Sansa, where Sansa met Lady Olenna, Marjorie's grandmother, she felt that Mace was so focused on marrying Marjorie off to a king that he's overlooking some major red flags.
Right.
And this behavior must be, it feels like it'd be a pretty glaring red flag for a father-in-law.
The other thing is Garland and Joffrey could be tight, and actually it was just a setup line for the comeback, And after he said it, they fist bumped.
Yes, it might be that. But it's also not just the Tyrells that have to be noticing this. Tywin doesn't say anything about any of this, his behavior here in this chapter. And, he last Tyrion chapter.
We'll come back to that when we talk about the television show, because the television show is quite interesting in this very moment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just thought, Tywin's got to notice this behavior, and I wonder if it's speeding up this sharp lesson that he is planning for Joffrey. And, one thing Joffrey brings up about this book, he says, my father never had time for books. And, it made me think that I wonder if Joffrey has begun to rewrite Robert in his head now that Robert's gone. The man went from absent father to this man that he admires and feels worthy of following in his footsteps.
Yeah.
Remember last time with Tyrion chapter, Joff told Tywin that his father won the war while Tywin hid under Casterly Rock.
Yeah. What's funny, of course, is because of our very strong suspicions of Joffrey's parentage, is the sort of like the double meaning of all this, sort of like Jaime too doesn't read things. And
Right.
Jaime in some ways won the war.
Right, that's true. Yes, there is a two-pronged situation there. Yeah, I just wonder if Robert is a safe space now in Joffrey's mind. No longer the scary drunk who sometimes beat him. He's just a memory to rewrite as needed, which is kind of a new development, because way back in Sansa 1 of A Clash of Kings, when Tyrion arrived at the Red Keep during Joffrey's name day
Uh-huh.
tournament,
Yeah,
Tyrion expressed his condolences to both Joff and Sansa ultimately about the death of both of their fathers, and Joff didn't know what in the world he was having condolences expressed to him for. He had to be reminded by Tyrion that his father died. So, maybe it's now that I'm king, and now that this guy's gone, I can admire him and look up to him more and rewrite what he actually was.
Yeah, I think it's a common thing when a child loses a parent is to sort of like burnish their reputation in memory.
Right.
And
Yes.
it's just a particularly extreme case here because I think Robert was a terrible father,
Oh,
and
yes. Right.
but it is actually it's sort of humanizing to Joffrey that he is doing that. To be honest, because thinking well of others, even dead others, is better than what I actually think Joffrey gets up to. I think he thinks ill of everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Mm.
true. Yeah. There's one thing when things start to get heated between Joff and Tyrion, Sansa fears that Tyrion might retort and setting off an unpleasant face-off like at her wedding feast. And I remembered that there was some sort of unpleasantness between Joff and Tyrion, but I couldn't remember exactly the specifics since it was now 8 months ago. So
Mhm.
I went back and looked, and it was at the start of the bedding ceremony. Joffrey wanted to strip Sansa, and Tyrion read the fear in Sansa's face and said there would be no bedding, and Joff protested, and Tyrion threatened to geld Joff.
Yes.
And then Tywin stepped in, and Tyrion apologized and said it was just a joke I took too far. And so that's the mess that she was worried about, something like that happening again.
Yeah. And then one last comment about the book. It was a really well pitched gift by Tyrion because it was a beautiful gift. It was valuable. It was worthy of a king, and of course, it was a red flag to the idiot that is Joffrey. And
Yeah.
so,
Right.
uh,
Red, it was like a red flag to a bull. It was just
exactly,
meant
yeah.
to set him
Come
off, no
on,
doubt.
come on, Joffrey. So the suggested replacement is the fabled Valyrian steel dagger that was used in the assassination attempt on Bran's life. I'm lost as to why Joffrey should react, and you're gonna have to help me here because Tyrion sees the reaction and then pieces together that Joffrey was involved in that assassination. But why the hell would Joffrey try to assassinate Bran? Help me, Mackelly. I've forgotten. This is question number 21 on the quiz.
Well, so yeah, Tyrion's responding to two comments that Joff makes. Adam Marbrand says Valyrian steel is very sharp. Be careful with that. And Joff responds,
Says, I know.
"Yes, I remember. I'm no stranger to
I'm no
Valyrian
stranger.
steel."
That's right. Yes.
So those two comments, plus as you mentioned in the summary, the sharp look
Sharp look.
that
Yeah.
Joffrey gives Tyrion when Tyrion mentions, "How about I get you a Valyrian steel dagger to go with your Valyrian steel sword," and perfectly describes that dagger. And then right before Joffrey starts talking, he says, "You," and then he pauses and then goes on about, "Yes, do that. I want that, but I want it to have a more ornate handle."
Handle, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a great deal of context clues to make assumptions on, but maybe
Okay,
it's enough to ignite a spark.
help me here, though. Has there been previous clues as to Joffrey's involvement in that assassination?
No, not that I've picked up
That's
on.
right. That's what I thought. It seems out of the blue. And also, I mean, look, I can totally see that the sharp look might make you think. And you're right, the comment about not being a stranger to Valyrian steel. That's two things that maybe would say, interesting. Joffrey knows more about this dagger than he's letting on. But to lead to the thing that a 12-year-old would try to assassinate a crippled boy when that 12-year-old, to the best of our knowledge, has no reason to want that child dead.
Right.
That the 12-year-old's parents do.
Right. Definitely. Yes. Yeah, it's definitely not a lot to leap to this conclusion.
Right. But the
It's
thing
like
is, that's fine. That's fine for us. But Tyrion is leaping to it. There's no
yes.
question Tyrion is leaping to that conclusion.
Yeah, because he follows up later in the litter when he starts
Exactly.
asking Sansa if Joff quarreled with Bran. So clearly he's considering the possibility, but he's not considering the possibility that Joff is lying just to look cool, saying, "Oh, I know all about Valyrian steel."
Right.
You know, that's as very more likely that that's what he's doing
Yes.
than
Occam's razor says that's what Joffrey meant. He
right.
was bragging.
So,
Yeah.
but look, we should probably put a pin in this topic for now because, as we'll learn at the very end of this episode, next week is a Tyrion chapter, and I have it on pretty good authority. We might get his internal thoughts on
Lovely.
his suspicions.
All right,
so
good.
we'll
More
discuss
to
it
come.
next week in more detail.
More to come. All right, so Tywin's gift is one of the 2 Valyrian steel swords that Tywin had Tobo Mott forge, presumably from ice, though I don't think that's been made crystal clear to us yet.
Right.
And when I say ice, I mean the sword, not from
not
frozen water. That
frozen
would be
water.
silly.
Right.
Tyrion sold those swords back in Tyrion 4. A quick question for you. Do you think this is the larger or the smaller of the 2 swords? From Joffrey's rank, he should presumably get the larger, but if the other sword is intended for Jaime, I'd be tempted to give Joffrey the smaller. But in this chapter, it is called a long sword.
Yes. So yeah, I went back into Tyrion 4 to read that, how that all went down. And Jaime's sword is described as thicker, heavier, half an inch wider, and 3 inches longer than Joff's sword. So it is the bigger sword.
Okay, I see. The one Joffrey's been given is the smaller of the 2. Okay.
Yes. And you're right. We still don't know where so much Valyrian steel came from, but yes, we have conjectured that there was a very large Valyrian steel sword.
Right.
Just hanging around on the back of Sir Illian Payne. So,
yeah.
One thing that struck me in this chapter is that Tywin didn't keep a sword for himself. He gave a sword to his grandson and a sword to his son. And the more I think about it, Tywin doesn't seek a great deal of limelight for himself. It's more about limelight for the house.
Yes.
That's his primary focus, house overall, the image and the power of the house.
So, but that's a good point because both of those swords could pass outside House Lannister as a result of this. I mean, Jaime is a Kingsguard and so not going to have issue, and Joffrey is technically a Baratheon.
Yeah, theoretically, one or both could give their swords away, I guess,
Yeah, I suppose the expectation would be that when Jaime passes away, the sword would pass down to a Lannister somewhere.
Yes, you would think.
But yeah, you're right. It's interesting that he didn't make sure one of them was firmly in the house.
Right. Sent directly to Casterly Rock to be mounted in their great room there. Yeah.
So the sword gets named Widow's Wail by consensus from shouting out from the crowd. It's kind of a cool name. I kind of like it. I mean, especially for someone like Joffrey, sort of like...
Yeah, I'm not surprised he gravitated toward a negative.
No, of course, yeah. Not Edge of Justice or something like that.
Right, yes.
Yeah. If I was in the audience, I would have been sorely tempted to shout out something a little bit more on point. Something like A-Hole's Sword or Child of Incest's Stolen Blade. Realistically, I wouldn't. I talk about game.
Yeah, that might not have gone very well.
Tyrell, yeah.
Maybe it was Garland Tyrell that shouted out Widow's Wail.
Yeah. Again, another fist bump.
Yes. Planned it ahead of time.
So when they get to the litter, they shut the curtains, and despite it being a beautiful day, and like you said, it's because Tyrion's afraid of attack from the small folk because he's in it. It's an unfortunate life he leads.
Yep. He leans into that monkey demon thing a bit too much that the person was spouting about when he was driving past that one chapter ages ago. He just accepts the bad reputation, and he does things like he openly burned the structures leaning against the outside of the wall before the battle because he thought it was too much of a liability, which he's right.
Yeah.
But maybe don't be the one that's out there pointing at things. Yeah.
Just issue the broad command and stay out of sight.
Yes, exactly.
So the chapter ends with some good insight into Sansa being clueless as to what Tyrion actually wants. I mean, I think on some levels, Sansa is old enough to know what Tyrion wants sexually, yes, but his not pressing that has not she has not concluded from that that he is a chivalrous and kind husband who wants her to be happy and to wait to want him. It's it's confused her more. It's made her,
Yeah,
it's sort
yeah.
of like discombobulated her about, well, what are his motivations? And it's like there's a closed door in her mind towards the correct answer, which is Tyrion wants to be her friend.
Right.
She can't even imagine that one.
Yes, yes. Yeah, if we had seen her through Tyrion's POV for a while now and wondered what's going on in her head. So it has been really helpful to finally get into her head and see what she's thinking, because last time we were in her head was at her wedding. So we've had 8 months of marriage as far as our timeline goes here in our show, to wonder what's she thinking about all this. And something Rob said last week that I think rings true is she's still a young girl. She's still caught up in looks and gallantry, and those are things that Tyrion's not going to be able to provide. So
Yeah.
she's disappointed, and she doesn't know what, like you said, she doesn't know what to make of him. At one point, she can feel that he is wanting something from her, like a starving child, but she doesn't know what to give him to
Yeah.
make him content.
But what she needs to do is lower her own barriers. She's got to stop just being polite and formal and accommodating to him, and actually talk to him as an equal.
Right.
He is not. I mean, that's the thing. In her mind, he's the enemy. She can't get past that. But I think he isn't. I think if she were to talk to him freely, she would discover that he is a kindred spirit and actually wants the
Yes.
best for her.
Yeah. I just don't think she's reached a level of maturity to be able to recognize that yet.
All right. Do you have some background for us?
I do have some background.
I'm gonna take a nap here. It's a big old background.
So I'm going to give a bit more info on the Viserys that Tyrion and Oberyn debate. Now, Oberyn thinks that Kaith was too kind to Viserys, and Tyrion thinks the author scants the man. Well, you probably figured out by now that it's not Dany's brother Viserys that is
Thank God.
the man up for debate here. He'd have been Viserys III had he made it to the Iron Throne.
No debate on that guy.
Right. I've got to be a bit careful these days because this content is directly related to House of the Dragon. So, and we have talked in the past about House of the Dragon, and Viserys' role was mentioned. However, I'm kind of hoping many of you are listening about as well as Simon is right now and have forgotten any of the spoilers I laid out way back then.
I'm just making a shopping list.
So the man in question is Viserys II, who is actually the grandson of Viserys I. This Viserys was the second son of Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen and her uncle Prince Daemon Targaryen. Now, I really don't want to go into the details on his fate in Dance of the Dragon, so I'm going to skip ahead. He was hand of the king to 3 kings, 2 of which get a reference here in this chapter. Daeron I and Baelor I were both his brother's sons. And as Tyrion points out, many felt that Viserys was the one who truly ruled the realm while his nephews sat the throne. So King Daeron warred with Dorne and ultimately brought the kingdom into the realm forcibly. However, the arrangement didn't last very long, and the young king eventually died fighting the Dornish. Actually, the kids were reading of Daeron when Davos arrived for his lesson with Maester Pylos.
Yeah.
Daeron's younger brother Baelor was next to sit the Iron Throne, and like they discuss in this chapter, he was next level pious. You might recall he was the king who had his sisters locked in the Maiden Vault to keep them pure. Now, some of Baelor's pet projects included outlawing prostitution in King's Landing, probably saw that one coming, replacing messenger ravens with messenger pigeons, super important, providing tax breaks to lords who put their daughters in chastity belts, and fasting. Oh, did he fast? He fasted for everything. In fact, Tyrion mentioned it was a fast that killed him. He died on the 41st day of that fast. Although, as Oberyn points out, there's also rumors that Baelor was poisoned by Viserys.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see why Tyrion thinks that Viserys should get more credit. Both kings were a bit distracted from the day-to-day ruling of the realm. Ultimately, Viserys did become the 10th Targaryen king with the death of Baelor. Even then there was controversy, as some thought the rule should have gone to his niece Dana. And Viserys did have a short rule. It was much longer than the 2 weeks that Oberyn gave him credit for. However, in that short time, he implemented some positive rules, which I was mentioning at the beginning of our discussion, that there was a king there when we were talking about kings that did some positive things. He did things such as issuing reforms of the royal household and its functions, establishing a new royal mint, making efforts to increase trade across the Narrow Sea, and making positive revisions to the already progressive code of laws established by the old king Jaehaerys I. Actually, it's believed that Viserys had it in him to be another Jaehaerys the Wise, as he was just as wise and shrewd. Unfortunately, a sudden illness led to Viserys' death in 172 AC. He also has the unfortunate distinction of being the father of one of the worst kings of all time, Aegon IV, also known as Aegon the Unworthy, who is the third king in Kaith's book, Daeron the Second being the fourth king. The book is called The Lives of Four Kings.
Yeah.
Some actually believe it was Aegon IV, who is Viserys' son, who poisoned his father and led to Viserys' death.
I'll say I'm more suspicious of that poisoning than the other one you mentioned, because
Right.
if you're fasting, it's very difficult to poison you because
It is.
so. But if you fast for 41 days, you might well die.
Yes. Yeah, I guess they'd have had Viserys would have had to slip something in his drink. Yuzumi was drinking something over those 41 days, or he would have not made it that long.
So in comparison with the television show, the cloud watching is skipped, but the book gift and the subsequent biblioclasm. I looked up a word, Mackelly. Biblioclasm.
Oh,
That
wow.
means the destruction of books. Biblioclasm.
Okay.
They very much happen. Tyrion has the line about every king should read it, not Uncle Kevin.
I think it's more impactful with Kevin.
I do too. Or in some ways, it's kind of more hidden by coming from Kevin, but it should have had a bigger effect on Joffrey. They did.
Right. Third party opinion.
Yeah. But then when Tyrion gives the gift, unbelievably, Joffrey says the words, "Now that the war is won, we should all find time for wisdom. Thank you, Uncle."
Nuh-uh.
Uh-huh. And
Wow.
he did it sort of glancing round towards his mother and grandfather. And they were like,
this,
uh-huh. Yeah.
This is what I'm supposed to say, right?
Right. Tyrion and Sansa both do a sort of simultaneous narrowing of the eyes when he says this. Like, what is he up to? I really like that touch, actually. I thought it sort of hinted at Tywin imposing a bit of discipline on the king, and also makes the moment where he reverts to Ty all the more satisfying, because
yes,
comes more out of the blue,
right.
He gets the sword, his true colors are revealed. He also reveals the provenance of the sword when he says, "Every time I use it, it will be like cutting Ned Stark's head off all over again."
Oh, how lovely.
Yes. And there's no mention of the MacGuffin dagger at this point.
Okay.
You know what a MacGuffin is?
Not off the top of my head.
It's an item used in literature or movies which has got real value to the people involved, but to the reader doesn't necessarily have the real value. So I think the sort of classic examples are the Maltese Falcon, and also the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. We never know what's in there, but it's a MacGuffin. The One Ring in Lord of the Rings is also considered that, but it's more central to the plot. That one, it's usually central to the plot, but actually useless. You know what I mean? Just a thing that sort of motivates the characters. So the dagger is sort of like that here.
Yeah, I like it. Good lesson there.
Full of it. All right, pedantry corner. All right, only one thing for me in pedantry this time, but how the hell are we going to get a wedding in at noon after this kind of lavish breakfast? Baelor's Sept is on the other side of town. Does the Sept have parking for 500 litters? 1,000 guests are tracing up that hill. It's a logistical nightmare. There's no
It
way this
really
works.
is.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That is a
If
problem.
there was no breakfast, sure, everyone could take their time and get up there by noon.
Yeah.
But this breakfast, unless this breakfast was at like 6:30.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, I wonder about parking. You bring up a good point about parking.
And also, you've just come from kind of a lavish breakfast. You've eaten a lot, maybe some coffee. Where's the bathrooms?
Oh, yes.
1,000
Yeah.
people arrive desperate to pee. Or I mean,
Well,
with coffee, poop.
One thing I can't do is laugh. It makes me, it ignites a coughing fit. So this has been quite the struggle.
You've come to the right place.
Yeah, so we need a much more serious show here. It's the key.
All right, news and notes. Thanks for your patience while we took our vacations. They were most welcome, and I hate seeing his face slightly less. But I do like making him cough.
I feel the love. Hopefully, I got that cough edited out. Yes. How that is our love language right there.
Yeah. And we have a new BMAX sustainer, a new Buy Me a Coffee sustainer. Someone is the name of the person. They joined our Knight of the Realm.
Yes, someone.
Well, welcome, someone. We are grateful for your support.
Yes, thank you very much, someone. I look forward to interacting with you, and it's awesome. Thank you so very much. And we got a review from Pajazet from podchaser.com. It goes like this. Love listening to this while working and before bed to get more background information on the lore and world, as well as refreshing up on the previous books while I read the newer ones. The hosts are knowledgeable, give good summaries and relevant background information on the characters and world. On top of that, this is genuinely one of the funniest podcasts I've read. Now, I came across this review while I was waiting to start the Game of Thrones trivia game.
Oh, so, that's perfect. You now have a certificate to say, yes, we are knowledgeable.
Yes. And I read this part about being genuinely one of the funniest podcasts ever. I'll just read the next line as well. The hosts are hilarious and manage to make me laugh every episode. Now, I read that to my loving wife, who rolled her eyes and I'm pretty sure disagreed pretty significantly with that opinion. But I don't care because that's not the opinion that I'm focusing on right now.
Pajazet is the one who said it.
Right. Anyway, the last episode I listened to had a debate on whether or not Westeros had invented zippers on pants because in the show, a character did the motion with shaking off after relieving himself. I believe that was all you, which is still one of the funnier moments.
Yeah, I don't even remember what motivated that. Really, I mean, I remember having the conversation. We do go off on tangents.
Yes, we do. I'm still catching up on the podcast, but from what I've seen, they always listen to feedback and apply it. They've even started uploading to YouTube because someone requested it. That we do. Must listen to if you are a fan of the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. Thank you guys for making this podcast.
Well, thank you, Pajazet. That's terrific. That was really nice to read. I got a warm glow. But let's conclude. Joffrey's no Prince Charming, but did he have something to do with the assassination of Bran? If so, why? It seems strange to jump to this conclusion, unless Cersei told him to do it. You know, did you like that little kid who fell out of the thing? Nah, not much, Mum. Well, why don't you kill him?
Well, right.
Here's a dagger.
Yeah, it isn't a lot to go on. You're right. I mean, it's not like he said, "Oh, I'm very familiar with Valyrian steel. I once gave a guy a Valyrian steel dagger."
Cat's paw, Winterfell, Bran. Nothing.
Maybe if he had mentioned all that, it would be a little more clear. But Tyrion is an astute observer.
Yeah.
So maybe he's picking up on something that we missed.
There's astute observation, and then there's extrapolation to weird conclusions, and it just feels a bit strong to me. But I tell you what I've noticed is there's a recurring theme of people avoiding bonding with those who reach out to them. So Sansa with Tyrion is an example here, but also Tyrion with Oberyn. Oberyn Martell is clearly willing to befriend Tyrion to a certain point. He definitely
Yeah,
wants what he wants, but Tyrion kind of like cuts him off and doesn't really.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
Oberyn comes over and shares the pain of the loss of that book. They kind of commiserate. He gives him commiseration about I saw a copy of that book once
yeah,
at the
yeah,
Citadel. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And Tyrion is kind of gruff and curt with him.
And a third example of this maybe is Joffrey with Tyrion. I mean, the book was a chance, it was an opportunity to build a bridge and
Sure.
mend some of the fences, but their interests, I mean, those pairs of characters, their interests do overlap imperfectly, but they do overlap. But the olive branches keep getting spurned, and
Right.
no progress
Yes.
is made.
No, not on any of these fronts. And
And
certainly not between Sansa and Tyrion. I mean, you
no,
mentioned that,
that's
but
the one.
yeah, they really could be good together if they allowed themselves. If Sansa would accept the olive branch that Tyrion keeps reaching out with.
Yeah, it's
But
like they're doing a very formal dance with each other when they just need to get their disco on.
right, yes, get their disco on.
Yeah. It's strange to have a chapter of Sansa without any furtherance of the get out of here with the drunken Sodontus plot. Is she cooling on that idea, or did you spot the reference when she said it was coming to a head? Then the wedding day is the day.
Right.
It makes
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
excitement, but you know what? The thing about reading these books is what happens is you're going to move away from this to some other point of view, and you're not going to find out what happens at the wedding. Where are we going next, Mackelly?
Oh, we're staying right here. We're jumping back to Tyrion.
Oh well, in that case, fingers crossed for Sodontus not getting drunk at the wedding.
Right. Yes. Of all the times, it might be a good time for him to skip the drink at
Uh-huh.
this particular feast.
So that'll be three
Yeah.
in a row for Westeros's happiest couple.
That's right. And we have a wedding to look forward to.
And you know we love a wedding. Well, nothing
We
ever
sure
goes
do.
wrong.
No, nothing ever goes wrong. It's
Yeah.
it's all rainbows and unicorns for sure.
Well, there's 4 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a positive review like Padgett did. You could buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. Become a sustainer at the Lord Paramount on Night of the Realm level and have your name read out on the podcast and have our eternal gratitude. Or you can just make a
Absolutely.
donation directly at ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, check us out on our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.